Welcome to the People, Passion, and Purpose podcast, where you will hear from creative small business owners in the trenches every single day, talking story, talking lessons, talking failures, talking truth. I'm your host, Nina L. Kovner. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. This week, we have the raddest human as our guest, Tina DeSeta, who's a salon owner, colorist, community builder, mental health warrior, and overall fucking badass. Tina, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you.
I'm so stoked. I know that we've been trying to do this for a while, and I was so excited to do it. I guess it was last week. Was it last week? And then we had the snowpocalypse in Eugene, Oregon.
Yes.
And so thank you so much for being patient and flexible and rebooking with us. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So there's so many things I want to ask you, so many important things I want to talk about. So let's dive right in. When did you become a salon owner, stylist? Why and why? Tell us, give us some context and background.
So when I was in high school, I was kind of, I guess, a classic creative, like kind of felt aimless, didn't quite know where I was going. I really enjoyed cutting and coloring my friends' hair. I shopped a lot at Hot Topic and stuff like that. And loved cutting and coloring my friends' hair after school. And so my parents encouraged me to go to beauty school, which I so appreciate. They saw it as a viable career. I was able to graduate a year early, which I'm super grateful for because I wasn't a great student, but I was still able to do that. And I ended up moving from Maryland to Virginia in 2010 to do an apprenticeship. So started apprenticing in 2010, got licensed in 2012.
Wow.
Which it took me about 6 months later than it should have to get through my apprenticeship because I'm a slow learner, but when I learn, it sticks. It just takes a while. So then I was at that salon until the end of 2016, which is when I moved into a Phoenix salon suite. I shared a single suite with a friend of mine. We just alternated schedules. And then a year later, I signed with Sola and got my own space with a window, which was amazing. So yeah, my business is DeSeta Hair Design. And I guess the reason I got into hairdressing to begin with is honestly because I was kind of scared, like intimidated of hairdressers when I was younger. I thought they were so cool.
So cool. And me too. The coolest.
I was like terrified of them because I was like, they're way too cool for me.
Yeah, same.
I could never be that cool. So then when I became a hairstylist, I still felt that way a lot, honestly. But my purpose was always to, I don't know, make hairstylists more approachable, if that makes sense.
Ooh, yes.
Kind of break down that stereotype.
Yeah.
Kind of show that hairstylists can be raw and real and chill and not scary.
Not scary.
Yeah.
I love it. As you were sharing your story, it's very interesting that I'm so glad that you shared that your parents actually supported and encouraged you to go to beauty school. That's like unheard of.
Well, and I'm very, 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 very privileged that they were like that. They were amazing.
Wow.
And they did everything they could to help me succeed and really believed in me from the start. I'm so appreciative.
What a gift. That is so very cool. Okay. So, gosh, they're just so much. So much. I love how you shared about making, changing that stereotype, making hairdressers or salons, feel more approachable because it's true. It's true. And it's so not like, it's almost like counterintuitive because hairdressers are like, you guys are like the healers that have the servant's hearts. That's what you do. You take care of people and you bring people in and you hug their hearts and make them feel beautiful. Yet there is this feeling of you're so cool. I also found there's a feeling of, in A school right now, we're reading Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, and Brene Brown talks a lot about armor. And I feel like for me, in my experience, not just when I was a young hairdresser, but obviously in my business career, I felt that I had a lot of armor. And it was my uniform. It was my black. It was, my all black. Yeah. It was my, and I feel like some of that fear or that intimidation is actually armor.
Yes. I totally agree with that. And I think I'm really fortunate that when I was getting into the industry, by the time I was licensed, Instagram was a thing. Barely anyone was using it. I remember finding Larissa Love, just a handful of people. And I latched to those pages because I was like, oh my God, hairstylists are using social media to promote their art. This is crazy. And, but I noticed a shift then where you were starting to see a little more behind the scenes of what hairstylists were actually like when they weren't interacting with their customers.
Oh, yes.
And that is, one thing that a lot of people who are connected with me on Instagram know. I think it's so important to show your face on your social media, especially if you're trying to market to new customers, because it helps them understand what your personality is like, and that you're not just this, you're not just this robot who creates beautiful hair and posts it on the internet.
Totally. Social is about human interaction.
Yes.
But that's such a great point, is that before social, how would we see the human side of any business, quite frankly? Any service business. That is such a great point, and really speaks a lot to why it's so important to be human and be authentic and be real, minus the TMI, Yeah. I love that. Let's talk about purpose. You mentioned purpose when you were sharing what does purpose mean to you?
Oh, so I guess it's the thing that gets me up in the morning. The thing that pulls me out of my slump when I get into my slump. And my personal purpose is, again, just, I guess I'm always working to create a positive environment wherever I am. And sometimes I don't succeed in that. I am a naturally pessimistic person.
Are you really?
I really am. But it's more like I vividly remember my childhood. I remember being a young child, being 3, 4, 5, and feeling anxiety and feeling fear and being cynical, at a very young age. And my family remembers it. And there are many pictures of me as a child where I'm just I just have that serious kind of little kid scowl on my face, I'm analyzing the situation. And luckily, I think just because of the people in my life growing up and the people that have been privileged to be around have helped me form that into more of I'm a realistic person now, not a pessimistic person. I'm an optimistic realist.
Yes.
Yes. But that realistic side can be hard because sometimes I do feel I don't know. I do feel leaning a little more towards the pessimistic side, but I have to fight to be optimistic. And so actively trying to create a positive atmosphere wherever I am is definitely my purpose. And so in my salon suite, I want it to be a positive atmosphere. I want people to be able to sit down, take a breather, relax, leave all of their stress at the door. And that's just even outside of my business, just in my everyday life. I want people to feel that when they're around me.
I love that. And, I never picked up on that from you. And so what that tells me is you work very hard to be this realist optimist. I was talking with a friend the other day about the difference between judgment and judgmental. And we were kind of digging into doing a little research on that. And it was interesting because there's a big difference in doing some reading, and really it made so much sense. There's a big difference between having good judgment and being judgmental, and I when you said realist optimist, I kind of felt be a realist. You know what I mean? There's That's a good thing. There's a lot of good to being discerning and call it realist, call it having good judgment, call it being aligned with our values, call it walking in our integrity, call it just being smart, So I don't necessarily see that as a bad thing. And I love how you framed that. That's awesome. It makes so much sense. Okay. So when we were talking about doing the podcast, one of the things that we said we were going to talk about was this community over competition thing. And just a little disclaimer and a little context, I don't believe in competition. If you follow Passion Squared, you understand that if you've really developed and designed a brand that's aligned and clear and with your purpose and your promise and your people, there is no competition because as Simon Sinek says, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So the what is always going to be the same. You cut hair, someone else cuts hair. I'm a business coach, someone else is a business coach. So the what, if you're marketing on what, you have lots of competition. But if you're marketing on why, the competition disappears. However, I understand that this community over competition thing exists. I don't understand it though. So can you explain?
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm trying to remember the first time I heard it. I think the first time I heard it, I was at a networking event and I saw it like on a hashtag somewhere. And I was like, that's interesting. Mm-hmm. And I was talking to someone about it and we basically, they explained to me that it's just focusing on building up your community instead of focusing on competition. And so I was taught, like when I was in beauty school or in my apprenticeship, my mentor taught me the concept of the only thing you should be competing against is like who you were yesterday. And really what she meant by that is the closest you should get to competition is looking at, okay, how did I do that thing yesterday? How well did I do it? How could I do it better today? So more so focusing on growth instead of competing. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. It absolutely makes sense.
So then the community over competition, I personally am focusing on growing my community instead of competing with my community. So like I'm in a Sola studio. Not once do I feel threatened by any of the girls in my Sola building ever. And part of that is because we've got a great culture. We all really love each other and support each other and understand that we all have different strengths and weaknesses. But yeah, we never once get competitive with each other or get intimidated by each other or anything. We're constantly finding ways to build each other up, to encourage each other. If I walk by someone's studio and I see beautiful hair, I make sure that I stop, open the door and say, that hair is beautiful. You did an amazing job on that.
I love that.
Yeah. And that's how everyone in my building is. They're amazing.
And I love that you said you're not threatened because that's what it is. It's fear and feeling threatened, which of course, everything that I'm about is always going to go back to personal empowerment and emotional growth and emotional maturity and emotional development. And because that's where so much of this stuff is founded in that, I see, especially in the beauty industry, of course, I see people talking about community over competition, but I don't really see it in action. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
it's so easy to say like, oh, community. And it's like, yeah, I'm not sure if you really mean that.
I do think as long as you're coming from a position of wanting to love and empower others, then you don't even have time to worry about competition or fear or intimidation.
Yes. But if you haven't done the inside work, because you've done so much inside work. I've done so much inside work. That's one of the reasons we've come together. As we know, because we're vibing on that personal empowerment train together. But it is so founded in, childhood stuff and trauma and we all of those things. And so it's really, that's something you can't fix on Instagram. You know what I mean? You can't be like, okay, like this quote's not going to heal your trauma. It may open up your mind to go do the work, but it's not the work. You know what I mean? So I'm so glad you framed that for me, because I definitely had a much different idea of what I thought it was. And I like the explanation to shift the focus to community. But now that we're on mental health, of course, I really want to talk about that. So we share a passion for lifting the stigma, sharing our stories. And I really see you as a warrior and advocate.
I so appreciate that.
Since the moment I met you, I felt that. And so can you share a little bit with us about, like, when did you decide that you were going to use your voice, and how are you using your voice, and how can we collectively help others, whether we go through the stuff or not? You know, how can we be an ally? How can we, whatever? Let's talk mental health.
Oh, honestly, that is a loaded question, but I love it. It's pretty loaded. So I didn't really understand. I didn't really understand anything about mental health until the last couple of years. I think I had so many demons that I was working through. And I just hadn't been, like, I loved how I was raised, but I know that I wasn't raised in a culture of understanding, like, even, just depression and anxiety. Like, it was more of just considered a bummed out feeling.
Yeah.
And just one of those things that, like, mind over matter, you can work it out and it's no big deal. I didn't grow up in a community where we believed that you should be medicated necessarily. And if, like, one of my friends was medicated for something, my community would be kind of freaked out by that. Like, why don't they just work through their problems? Or I don't know. But I think
dismissive.
It's just, outdated.
It feels dismissive.
Yeah. And it's outdated thought processes. And just side note, I have a pet peeve about people saying stuff like, I wish I lived in another decade. Like, I wish I lived in the 50s. It was a simpler time. And I'm like, it was a quote unquote simpler time because no one was talking about their issues. No one was empowered to talk about their issues. And if they did feel empowered to talk about their issues, they got major backlash.
Yeah, well, as one who was born in the 60s, which isn't too far from the 50s, I can confirm that.
Yes.
There was no talking about anything.
And even, like, thinking about growing up in the 90s and it being such an argument over whether, like, ADD and dyslexia and all of these other things were real. Like, it was kind of the same with depression and anxiety. Like, it wasn't really real. It was just in your head, which, by the way, just because it's quote unquote just in your head doesn't mean it's not real. Your head is a real space.
Yeah, super real. Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I got there goes my bunny trail. In the last few years, I've been reconnecting with a friend of mine. Her name's Janelle, and she is a paraeducator for a special ed class in Maryland, and she is also a poet. And we actually met when we were teenagers. We were at a youth group together, and I got pulled into a room that she was in, and she was crying. And the youth pastor, this story is kind of intense, but it also cracks me up. Her and I shared a past of being sexually abused as children. And he literally grabbed me. He was like, hey, I know that you have this past of being sexually abused as a child, and she does too. I think you guys would get along great. And puts us in this room.
Oh my God.
And it was so bizarre. And I look back and he was, like, really young, really passionate, was just wanting to help people. But it was just so weird.
Yeah.
But we just sat and cried together and prayed together. And it was such a powerful moment. And I didn't realize how much that would, like, it was like an anchor to our friendship. And so now, roughly 10 years later, we are so close, and she visits really frequently. I actually host, like, acoustic and poetry shows at my apartment. And so she'll do a lot of those shows there. And she has a huge focus on mental health. she struggles with bipolar, anxiety, depression, loads of other things that I can't remember off the top of my head. And all of her poems concentrate on that. So having that around me so much in the last couple of years has really kind of enlightened me. And she has educated me so much. She's been so gracious to educate me so much and to teach me so much about mental health and about the stigma and about how we can break it down. And so honestly, I feel like I'm still in the beginning of my journey, and I attribute a lot of what I've learned to her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're all in the journey. I don't ever believe that we have ever arrived there. Because look, it's like I've done a shit ton of work for 12 years. And then as I've shared very openly, I have really struggled since I got to Oregon. And I've been dealing with mental health issues that haven't really been an issue for a decade. And I was so frustrated talking to my therapist. And I'm like, wait a minute, where did all this work go? I'm so frustrated. How can I be back in such a dark, dark place? And she's like, you don't even see the growth. You don't even see the work.
Yeah.
And it is constant. You have to constantly do the work, just like anything, right? Just like exercise or, whatever. We have to constantly do the work. And I think that it fits so beautifully with your commitment and your purpose as an artist, as a creative, and we need more of yous. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Okay, so speaking of childhood, any advice you'd give your younger self?
Oh, lots of it. Definitely. Don't be so hard on yourself. Oh my gosh. I was just such an intense child, and I don't regret having had that kind of childhood where I was just so intense, because I feel like I can empathize with intense children. And a lot of people can't. A lot of people are like, oh my gosh, what is wrong with them? And it's like, right. No, they're just figuring stuff out, and they're just growing up very fast. And you know what? That's okay. Some children go through that, but I was so hard on myself. I mean, I just remember struggling with so much self-hatred, and I don't even know why. I don't think it was all connected to the abuse that I went through. I really don't understand why I was so hard on myself. And I wish that I could go back sometimes and just sit on the couch, have younger me sit on my lap, hug younger me and say, it's okay. You don't have to be so hard on yourself. You made a mistake, move forward. But
you can honestly, you can do that.
Yes, I can.
Because I mean, again, as I've spoken openly, I did a 35-day, inpatient treatment program in 2007. And a lot of the trauma work is dealing with your inner child and literally hugging and raising that, and healing that child. It literally, we had in one exercise, we actually had to choose an inner child, like a stuffed animal, like a actual, and we had to carry it around with us.
Yeah.
And I put of course I put a black bandana on mine. Of course I had to totally trick mine out. But anyways, I mean, that shit's real. I mean, that's that's real mental health stuff. And the being hard on yourself, I can so relate to that, and that perfectionism, and really, really, having something that obviously you learned, at a very, very, very early age, this expectation. this expectation. And if I do this perfect, then I'm going to get this. If you know what I mean? It's that perfectionism that is so dangerous and so hurtful and harmful and destructive. And a lot of it is founded in those very early childhood messages and models that said that if I do this, then they'll love me.
Yeah.
They'll see me. They'll accept me.
Well, and that's what I remember feeling when I was younger, especially around the time when I was going through my abuse. I felt so unseen, which makes sense because literally there was traumatic stuff happening in my life that was not being seen. I felt unseen. And I mean, honestly, I remember up until a couple of years ago, just feeling that way. And it's funny because it wasn't until I dealt with that feeling and I was like, you know what? I am seen. Like, in my opinion, worst case scenario, I'm at least seen by God. But truthfully, I'm seen by him. I'm seen by my friends. I'm seen by my family. I'm seen by my husband who loves me. And once I realized, like, I'm seen in worst case scenario, even if I'm not, I'm still valuable.
Yes.
Like once I came to that conclusion, everything shifted dramatically. And it's not like everything was fixed, but everything shifted. And like suddenly I did just start to, I guess just that paradigm shift showed me like all of the ways that I was seen. And I just had, you know how sometimes like you just get these little moments that are beautiful reminders that you need in the moment.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And I think last year I had never done any hair competitions or anything because I was scared of competition because I was intimidated.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay, I need to get over this fear because the point of competitions isn't to determine who's best. It's to help you grow and try new things and get out of your box. And so I did one of Pulp Riot's competitions and I made it into the top 60 or something. And they did a live video and I literally screamed and threw my phone. I was just so excited.
I love it.
My husband was there and he was like, what happened? I was like, I made it into the top 60. I didn't even care. Like I didn't get any further than that. And I did not care at all because I was like, it was just a very sweet reminder that I had put forth the effort. I had tried something new that I was terrified to try. And although you don't always get rewarded for trying something new, I was rewarded in that moment. And it encouraged me to keep trying new things and keep pushing myself, not too hard, but just pushing myself to get out of my box.
You got the greatest reward.
Yes.
You got the reward of self-awareness.
Yes.
You got the reward of stepping one step closer to healing. And the reminder that it's cool to be brave and courageous.
Yeah.
You got the greatest fucking reward.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you shared that with us.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I'm getting super emo. Shocking. Oh, I love that. Okay. Do you have a favorite quote? You know, I gotta ask.
Yeah, I've got 1,000, but it's funny because I've actually been thinking of this ever since we planned to do this podcast. And I was like way overthinking it. And now I'm sitting at my window and I'm looking at this plaque that my friend Janelle made me.
Oh my God.
So a couple of years ago, I was going through the darkest period of my life. I mean, even darker than when my abuser got arrested. Like that I thought was the darkest period of my life. But a few years ago, I was going through a very, very dark period. I was not myself. I was doing things that were way out of character. I was like living way outside of my values and what I believed. And I was just so depressed. And like, I was so depressed, I couldn't cry when I really needed to. And I was just going through the motions, but I finally opened up to a friend of mine, my friend Janelle, because I was just feeling so heartbroken. And I think like a week later, I got this package in the mail, and it was just filled with all of these little fun books, like little things from Urban Outfitters, like knickknack type of things. There's this one book. It was a holographic. Is that right? Like the pages, you move them and it like
I think so.
Right. Yeah.
Like unicorn vibes. Like
yes, but it was called Dancing with Jesus. And it's like it's from Urban Outfitters. It's just like all these little funny pages with like Jesus dancing back and forth. I don't know. It just cracked me up. But then in the package, I found this wooden plaque that was painted black, and she wrote on it this quote from an artist named Sleeping at Last, which if you look up Sleeping at Last, it is some of the most beautiful music you will ever hear. And he talks so much about self-awareness, about mental health, about love, heartbreak. And this one song he has called Uneven Odds has a quote that says, "Maybe your light is a seed and the darkness the dirt." And so it's like when you're in the darkness, that little bit of light that you have can be a seed that can burst through the darkness. So just to like tend to that little bit of light, to nurture that little bit of light, so that it can eventually break through. And oh gosh, I'm just getting the chills. I'm getting very emotional. I'm feeling really good about it.
Yeah.
I just love that quote so much. It really, it wasn't like catalytic to me getting out of that funk that I was in. It wasn't like the thing that broke me out, but it definitely, like, I guess it was the catalyst that pushed me forward. It was the thing that pushed me forward. But it took me a few months to get out of that slump.
Well, of course. And, you know, it's those little simple reminders, those little messages that can have the greatest impact. Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
We try to complicate shit so much. And it's like, sometimes it's really actually not complicated at all.
Yeah. Oh, I complicate everything. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Tina, thank you so much for sharing with us today. I love you so much.
I love you.
Where can we find you? Oh, I just saw on Facebook that you're Insta famous, that can you first of all, tell that story real quick and then tell us where we can find you.
Oh, it was very cute. I'm a community builder here in town. So even though I'm introverted, even though I feel awkward talking to people sometimes, I tend to build relationships quickly. So I'm used to being known around town. I live in downtown Fredericksburg. I'm used to people knowing me, but I went into a coffee shop that I haven't been to in a long time, to grab my hairdresser some coffee before our appointment. I walk in, go up to the counter, and the barista slams her hand on the counter and is like, "Oh my God, you're Tina DeSeta Hair on Instagram."
I love
and
it.
I was like, yeah, yes. Oh my God. I just didn't even know what to do. I was so awkward. I was like, I don't know what to do right now. I'm not used to people saying that.
Oh my God. I love it.
But it was a very cool moment. And she was like, "I'm so sorry." I was like, no, you don't understand. This is a huge honor. Thank you.
It is.
So, yeah.
That's
I am
awesome.
Tina DeSeta Hair, which it's Tina DESETA Hair. I almost shared my email.
That's okay. We'll just spam the fuck out of you. At Tina DeSeta Hair.
Yes. And then I think on Facebook it's DeSeta Hair Design. Yeah. I think it's still DeSeta Hair Design. I haven't changed that yet, I don't think, which this is a good reminder to change it eventually.
let us just use this podcast to update our social pages.
Yes.
Awesome. I love it. Thank you so much. I love you. Grateful AF for you. And to everyone listening, thank you so much for listening to this episode, listening to our podcast. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for the DMs and the messages. I see you and I'm so grateful. And What a fucking gift. Thank you so much, everyone. Have an awesome day. Thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. To learn more about Passion Squared, you can visit us at passionsquared.net. You can find us on the gram and on Facebook at Passion Squared, and be sure to subscribe and share with your friends. We're so grateful. Thank you so much for joining us. Have an awesome day, guys. Love you.